Let's talk about self-discipline. Why is it so hard? Why do we constantly fail at the goals we set for ourselves? Well, today we're going to dive deep into the psychology behind it all and uncover the hidden reasons it so often feels like a massive uphill battle.
You know that feeling, right? You know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Hit the gym, finish that big project, stop eating junk food. But for some reason, you just don't. It feels like there's this huge gap between the person who wants to do the thing and the person who actually has to do it.
And it's this super frustrating cycle. You start off with this incredible burst of motivation, right? You've got a crystal clear vision of what you want. And hey, for a day, maybe even a week, it actually works. But then life does what it does. Stress creeps in, you get tired, and boom, that perfect plan just completely falls apart.
So what gives? Why does this keep happening? It really starts with a huge misunderstanding of what we're even fighting in the first place. So let's talk about what I like to call the willpower myth.
Think about this number for a second. 91%. That is the percentage of New Year's resolutions that fail. They just never happen. I mean, a failure rate that massive tells you one thing really clearly. Whatever most of us are doing, it's just not working.
And this quote just gets right to the heart of it. We have this idea that self-discipline is some kind of moral test, a measure of our inner strength, and if we fail, well, we must be lazy or weak. But what if that whole way of thinking is just wrong?
And that brings us to why we really fail. Here's the good news. It's probably not a character flaw. It's more like a design flaw. Not in you, but in your approach. You're working with a flawed blueprint of how your own mind operates.
So let's break this down. On the left, you see the myth. Self-discipline is this endless virtue, a battle you win with brute force. But the reality, what the psychology tells us, is on the right. It's a finite mental resource. So the game isn't about fighting harder, it's about managing your energy smarter.
Honestly, this is the best way to think about it. Your willpower is just like your phone's battery. You start the day at 100%, right? But every little decision you make, every single time you have to exert self-control, it's like opening another app. It just drains that battery, bit by bit.
Okay, so if our willpower is this battery that's constantly draining, what exactly is using up all the juice? Let's get into the mind's hidden triggers, these invisible forces that are derailing us without us even realizing it.
So, what's draining our battery? We're going to look at three big culprits. First up, decision fatigue. Then we'll get into this really interesting idea called the empathy gap. And finally, we're going to tackle our brain's obsession with what feels good right now. Each of these is a silent goal killer. All right, let's start with decision fatigue. Think about it. From the second you wake up, what to wear, what to eat, which email to answer first, every single choice you make chips away at your mental energy. So by the end of the day, when you're faced with go to the gym versus melt into the couch, your brain is just exhausted. It takes the shortcut. It defaults to the easiest option. Next is the empathy gap. This is basically the huge disconnect between your planning self and your doing self. So on Sunday night, you're calm, you're rested, and planning a week of super healthy meals and workouts seems totally doable. But that calm planning you has zero idea what it's going to feel like to be stressed, tired, future you on a Wednesday afternoon who just wants pizza. You're making plans for a completely different person. All these things are playing a part for sure, but there's one big overarching concept that really ties it all together. So what is the single biggest drain on that mental battery we've been talking about? It's a phenomenon called ego depletion. This is really the core idea here. Basically what it says is that every single act of self-control, whether it's resisting a cookie, forcing yourself to focus on a boring spreadsheet, or even just being polite to someone who's annoying you, it all draws from the exact same limited pool of energy. And here's the real kicker. It's a domino effect. Saying no to that donut at 10 a.m. makes it way harder to avoid scrolling through social media at 3 p.m., which in turn makes it feel almost impossible to drag yourself to that workout at 7 p.m. Each yes to self-control makes the next one that much harder. Okay, so if pushing through with brute force willpower is pretty much doomed to fail, what's the answer? Well, that leads us to a much smarter approach. It's all about shifting from fighting your brain to finally starting to work with it. This here really lays out the key mindset shifts. So we're moving from brute force to managing our mental energy.
We're going from blaming ourselves when we slip up to becoming aware of what our triggers are. And maybe the most important one, we're stopping the focus on resisting temptation and starting to focus on reducing temptation in the first place.
And all of this leads to this really powerful kind of counterintuitive idea. When you look at those people who seem to have superhuman self-discipline, their secret isn't what you think. They don't just have some massive, endless tank of willpower.
The secret is they're the ones who have structured their lives so they barely have to use their willpower at all. They build habits, they create routines, they design their environment to make the right choice the easy choice. They don't win the willpower battle because they've set up their life so they rarely even have to fight it.
So let's just leave it with this thought. What if the answer to reaching our goals isn't about gritting our teeth and just trying harder? What if the real first step is to stop, take a breath, and just try to understand our own minds a little bit better?